Adam, welcome to the Ocean Age. So good to have you here. It took a while to organize this, but I was really looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Fed. Really happy to be here.
Look, a lot of what we are going to talk about today is, of course, around your company, Ocean Saver. But let's start with you, your background and early career. You're originally from Manchester, as I understand it, in the UK. It's always difficult to know how far back to go when starting to tell someone's story. For some people, childhood is the best place to start. For others, is way later in life. Something that caught my attention when going through the research about you is that in 2006, 2007, you were studying in Jerusalem at the Institute for Young Leaders. I'm curious, how old were you back then and what did you take from that experience?
Wow, you've really done your research. So I was growing up, I was really involved in youth movements and informal education. And yeah, that was a sort of intensive 3-month program, really learning different elements of leadership, really maybe a sort of less traditional approach to it and less corporate approach and actually more, so it's sort of called informal. It's not quite teaching, but it's how could you, especially in a youth setting, engage people, get them to grapple with a topic. And yeah, I absolutely love it. And it's something that I'm really passionate about, sort of training and development, and have used a lot in my career. And I guess it probably does flow through into the marketing and brand building that I do as well, because I sort of have seen personally how people can engage with the topic, and sometimes they might be a little bit reluctant to engage with it, but if you create the right environment for them, they see other people engaging with it, you make it fun, you can really take people on a transformative journey. So yeah, that program was working with amazing educators who spent their careers doing it and doing everything from, practicing improv to how to structure educational sessions to, yeah, all sorts of things, really creating campaigns and looking at sort of other success stories of previous campaigns and programs. So yeah, that was sort of just before university. And then actually when I was at university, I was sort of very involved in other societies and things like that. And I sort of, maybe I've always taken a sort of informal approach, creative approach to leadership. I just don't believe there's like one way of sort of cracking a problem, and like to really sort of take inspiration from different sources.
When you were there, how much was it the teaching that you were receiving versus the network and being around certain people?
Yeah, it was absolutely a bit of both. And the people from all over the world there, I remember quite vividly when one morning I saw a bunch of the Brazilian contingent running into the courtyard because it had started snowing and they'd never seen snow in their entire lives.
Oh, wow.
And can you imagine the joy of someone who's never seen snow for the first time as an 18, 19-year-old, and how much fun that is. And like that was really cool. And then Jerusalem, I don't know if you've ever been, it's a really amazing city with so many, home to so many different faiths and cultures, living really on top of each other, and just wandering the streets, tasting the food, chatting to people, like exploring every nook and cranny. Yeah, it's a great place for curious minds, and you really feel different kind of energy. And I'm really interested in this idea of energy, not in a like metaphysical sense, not like a spiritual way, and also not in a in a strictly scientific way, but really like the energy of groups and momentum. And I think that's something that's really important in business as well. And I personally always just try and bring energy to what I do. And I think yeah, I guess Jerusalem is just a place where you feel a lot of energy. And I think that's why it's, often, let's say, a political flashpoint and so on. But yeah, it's unmistakable if you ever visit.
Was it then difficult to recreate that level of energy and vibe and serendipity in other places?
It's a great question. I think a lot of the answer to that question depends on sort of who you've been with. And I think there's been definitely times, so that would have been, yeah, over 15 years ago, no more. Um, there's probably been a few times over my career or when I was at university where you've had a really passionate group of people, working alongside them, doing something really interesting. A bunch of different times in my career, but
They're quite rare, aren't they?
yeah, they're rare, and so you really savor them and you really just try and enjoy them. And I don't know if you're the same, but whenever I've had an experience like that, or let's say you've been part of an amazing team, you always want to try to recreate that as much as possible. And
That's why I was asking. That's exactly why I was asking, because those are quite rare. But when you see it, you've seen it, and now you always want to recreate that. But it's so difficult, and it's almost like you're aspiring at that level of perfection, and because you know it's possible, you know it exists.
mm, yeah, yeah, definitely.
So in 2007, you then went to University of Oxford in the United Kingdom to study philosophy. What made you choose philosophy?
So it's actually philosophy, politics, and economics, and it's let's say that course has quite a reputation in the UK. I think so. Previously, it was known as like the place that so many politicians, prime ministers, etc., or the course that many of them studied. I think for now, it's probably got a worse reputation. I think nowadays, yeah, maybe today's youth don't look on that as positively, but I liked it because it was all about balancing, I think, sort of head and the heart. I'm a bit of a generalist and I could never put myself into one thing, so I liked that philosophy was sort of connecting me to the thoughts of people over the last few thousand years and grappling with really huge ideas of how we should live, so ethics and political philosophy and how we should sort of structure society, as well as sort of metaphysical questions and looking at perception and what makes us human and things like that. And then marrying that with political comparative politics and really analytically looking at how political structures work, power, institutions, and trends, and how that all comes about. And then also economics and looking at things at a micro level, macro level. So I think what I just liked about it was really it was the breadth, and even within that you could specialize and create overlaps. For example, I did behavioral economics, which I think is really interesting and I think is super relevant for anyone working in brand or product design. So yeah, I just liked that it had breadth, that it was interesting, that I was with really interesting people, and that I guess it gave me the optionality to be able to do most things that weren't either vocational. I wasn't planning to be a doctor or an engineer, but a lot in the middle I could do with that degree. So that's why I chose that course.
Yeah, kept your options open. Anything that you find, any learning takeaways from that period that you still think about today?
That's such a good question, and it's not something I've reflected on hugely. I think the intensity of the course was a great grounding in just thinking quickly and making decisions and having a point of view on things. I think studying behavioral economics and political thought has given me some theoretical frameworks which I can use in my day-to-day work as a brand builder. And yeah, also economics I think is being in a consumer goods company and sort of working on things like price and perception of products and that sort of thing is really useful. But I think it's more about the people that you meet, the relationships that you build, and it just being a sort of amazing opportunity to just explore things that you are really curious about. So very privileged in that respect.
Yeah, curiosity is an interesting one to cultivate for sure. In a LinkedIn post, you wrote, "I grew up thinking I should become an accountant, all because my uncle had a red sport car. Then human rights lawyer, wanted to save the world, and somehow found my way into Procter & Gamble because someone said it was like a youth movement. What were your dreams and aspirations after graduating at Oxford?
I'm not sure how big my dreams and aspirations were, because when I graduated, it was the financial crisis of sort of 2008. So many of my contemporaries, I think it was the year before me, people were having their sort of internships or job applications. Like they had a job at Lehman Brothers, and then the bank collapsed and it sort of fell. So I think I wasn't probably at that stage thinking as long term as I maybe right now would want to. I probably youth was wasted on me in that respect. I didn't have as much of a grand plan, but I just knew that I wanted to do something that would use my talents and what I was good at and what I was interested in. And I fell into marketing and P&G because it probably just felt like, I don't know, it felt like the best fit of anything that I knew about at the time. And I think at the time I was probably also hoping for somewhere that I could learn, and probably, I'd spent my life in institutions, so to speak. So the allure of a big company was very, very powerful. Probably now I'd probably have more, if I was sort of doing it again, I'd probably actually be more open to exploring something entrepreneurial. I got a great grounding and sort of education at P&G as well. And it is, the company is a big company with a really strong internal culture. So it does have that sort of cult or like youth movement style environment, really intelligent, really able, really competitive people. So I love being in that environment. And I just love the idea of how do you convince people to do things. And I love the ownership. So maybe that would have been, consulting would have been maybe a close second, but I didn't like the fact that I didn't have ownership over projects. I'd just sort of just give someone advice and move on. I really didn't like that idea. I wanted it to be mine, and I wanted to see the fruits of my labor. So that's kind of how I fell into P&G, and then spent 11 years there, and I learned a whole lot about brand building and leadership, and many things in between.
How did you get that job? The reason I'm asking is when I looked at your CV, it looked like it was to do with brand management, big company. It looked quite senior for a newly graduate.
Yeah.
What happened there?
So P&G has a graduate scheme in that it takes graduate, but it's not a graduate scheme in the sense of, I think a lot of graduate schemes sort of send people around different rotations, different parts of the business, but I don't know to what extent they kind of own the work. And so what I liked about P&G was they just threw you on a brand from day one, and they kind of trusted that, you had a management structure to support you, but they threw you on a business and expected you to run the business. And
you were what, 20 something?
Yeah, like early 20s. Yeah. I started working on a skincare brand that we were trying to launch around the world. And I was doing everything from running the DTC site to developing new products. And it's kind of mad. Like I knew nothing about skincare or developing new products, but you just figure it out. They have frameworks, they have people with loads of experience, and it is quite amazing, to be honest. But I think they put you through quite a rigorous application process for that reason, because they want to be able to trust when you come out the other side that you can run a business.
So I guess it is a bit sink or swim, but also there's a lot of structure and support.
Yeah, I think probably it feels, when you come in as a junior, it feels like, oh my God, how are they just leaving me up to run this thing? But when you actually get more senior and you sort of look at it from the other side, you realize that it's not quite. And if something went wrong, someone could step in, and there are structures, and if you spend over a certain amount or take certain decisions, they all have the requisite levels of approvals. So you don't really have, someone junior just going off and doing something crazy. And also it's quite a matrix leadership structure. So you rarely can get anything done just on your own anyway. So you end up having to sort of work with other functions and things. But yeah, it still is, the onus is on brand in those businesses to lead, and you're expected to know your customer. And I think if you do know your customer really well, your consumer, and you can bring that insight and that data, then actually it doesn't matter how many years you've been in the company, you can win the argument. And I think that also just taught me something really powerful. I kind of, coming from Oxford, where I was grappling with genuinely massive ideas and philosophical debates that have never been solved in that sense. There was no like right answer. I sort of quickly realized that if in marketing something was too complicated, or I couldn't get my head around it, or it was taking too long to work out, then that was actually a sign that there was something wrong. And that actually, like, I was putting, maybe I had an assumption that was just making everything else problematic, or I was being asked to do something that wasn't possible.
Can you give an example of that?
I don't have like a sort of specific example, specific business, but a general point might be, if you're trying to develop an advertising campaign and you can't think how to actually, you can't come up with a good idea, you can't quite explain it to people, then it's probably because the underlying idea just isn't strong enough. And I sort of think, on any business, on any brand, on any product, on any service, you should be able to like knock on someone's door, and assuming they're the sort of person who you're trying to appeal to, you could sell them that product like door to door. You could, in your words, you could convince them from not knowing about the thing to being willing to buy the thing. And if you can't do that, then you can't create a marketing campaign to reach 1 million people that's going to do that any better. So actually, just to kind of really bring things back to the basics. So like, what is your proposition? Why would someone be interested in that? Why would they buy it? Why would they prefer you? And that's just quite a useful heuristic to have, to just go, okay, if I'm like bashing my head against the wall here, then something's up. Because actually, I mean, I found this on Ocean Saver as well. Nothing's ever easy, but when everything clicks into place, when you have probably what I think what people mean by product market fit, when you have product market fit, everything just feels easier. So the responses you get from people so much stronger and more positive. People understand what you're trying to communicate much quicker. Things sell faster. Every time you spend money, it delivers more. And it doesn't mean that it should be easy, because running a small business is really, really difficult. However, I think you kind of get that sense when something is like going somewhere and is getting traction, and when something isn't. And I think when it's not, you just really got to go back to basics, because it's not rocket science. Like, it should be able to be explained and sold to someone who doesn't have like a ridiculously high IQ.
So essentially, if it doesn't work at a basic level, it's never gonna work at scale.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think that is probably true in most cases, and equally, I think a lot of people say like, don't do stuff that scales, or like, don't worry about the scaling part of it. But yeah, if you've got a new product or service or a new brand, you've got to be able to convince individuals just face to face, without any shiny cells or any cool images, or like, you got to be able to find your first buyers. And you might have a niche proposition, and then down the line you'll hit a wall of like, it's too niche. But yeah, I think if anything, what I've sort of learned throughout my time at P&G and working in marketing, also a lot in Ocean Save as well, is that sort of building a brand is very simple, but it's just really, really hard to do simple things well. If you're sort of tying yourself in mental knots, something's not right.
Yeah, I think I should write that on my wall.
Yeah, we all should. We all should. And actually, it's a good, if you're sort of hitting that wall, you kind of go, okay, I need to take some time out. I need to go for a walk, or I need to like have a week off, or I need to go chat to some consumers, or I need to just go speak to that person who kind of tells it you straight, and then just put it in front of them and just face the harsh slap in the face that you actually need to go, okay, this is just, you're just overcomplicating it. Here's what I don't get, or here's why I wouldn't buy this, and just find a way of, on a really, really basic level, getting over that barrier. Then yeah, you can think that then there can be creativity, and it might be, some propositions aren't rational, and yeah, maybe you need to see them, and maybe the thing itself is just so sexy and exciting that once you put it in front of people, people are like, oh wow, yeah, that's cool. But yeah, you got to get to the point where someone's like, wow, that's great.
Is that your sort of process for simplifying things, like getting out of your head and
Yeah,
talking to
definitely.
people?
100%, 100%. So I also, because I think by talking, so for me, that's really important. But I've never regretted doing consumer research or just talking to people about a problem. And I definitely don't do it enough. But talking to peers, talking to consumers, you'll never, even if you feel, oh, I'm so busy, I need to just keep kind of digging the hole, I need to just keep going at it. Yeah, you'll never regret talking to someone who's got experience, who will either ask some good questions or say, "Oh, well, I tried this." Or you'll never regret talking to, I think, even 3 to 5 relevant consumers. You'll just get such obvious insights that they were like right in front of you, but you just never even saw them.
Does that happen a lot?
Yeah, all the time.
You're just too close to see it.
Yeah, 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 completely. We spend a lot of time in store on Ocean Save. Probably should explain to people what Ocean Save is.
Go for it.
Yeah, so we're trying to save ocean life from plastic and harmful chemicals in cleaning products. So we make dishwasher tablets, laundry detergent, and cleaning sprays and refills. And we're sold in Tesco, Waitrose, Asda, Cardo, Amazon, our website, Able and Cole, bunch of quite a lot of places. And so I spend a lot of time in supermarkets just observing how people shop dishwasher tablets or laundry detergent, and just asking them why would they buy this, like why do you buy that product, or off saying, trying to convince them, and just seeing what it is. And in that environment, they're really operating system one, subconscious, quick decisions, lots of heuristics. So you just get really quick, unfiltered responses, and it just helps drag you out of your kind of narrow vision on something.
That's really interesting. I want to go back to the sort of timeline. We were just starting out at P&G. So how did your career evolve within P&G, and what were the main drivers during those years for you?
So I spent 2.5 years working on a global skincare brand in Geneva. I then moved to the UK primarily for personal reasons. My wife got a job in the UK. And then I worked on a role across loads of different brands in P&G for a couple of years as well, which is really interesting. But probably I'd been 5 years in P&G, and I didn't feel that I'd actually done the traditional P&G assignment. So
why is that?
When you think of P&G, you think of like Pampers, Gillette, you think of these billion-dollar brands and the sort of traditional brand manager role on those brands. It's sort of the core role that business is known for. It's like the archetypal role. I guess maybe it's a bit like, I don't know, in a bank, being on like the M&A team on the big transactions versus just being like back office regulatory checks or something. I don't know. I kind of wanted to be where the action was. And I'd sort of done a role on a small brand that was was like a startup within P&G. I then worked across brands. Again, it wasn't sort of traditional core role. And then
so you wanted a big
I wanted
name.
a big brand in the UK market where I could I guess sort of make my name, but also learn a lot and be in the action. So yeah, joined Oral-B, got the opportunity to run the electric toothbrush business in the UK, and
That's pretty big.
yeah, big business, but also tons of growth opportunity. Took what I'd learned on beauty, brought that into oral care, took what I learned about digital, brought that into oral care, and like we had the most exceptional growth period on that brand. Ended up being the brand director for the UK and Ireland for total oral care category, and again learned loads, a load of fun. I really liked oral care because, well, my grandpa was a dentist, and you mentioned the sort of human rights thing, like sort of growing up with my family, like very strong sort of ethics and feeling of like responsibility and wanting to leave the world a better place. And you know, both my parents are like public servants or like work in the medical profession. So, you know, wanting to make them proud. So I felt like I was marketing a product that was making people healthier. Then after doing that for, yeah, a number of years, and also having kids, I wanted to expand my impact to working on something which is, I think, sort of the greatest challenge of our age, which is around sustainability and the climate crisis.
So to jump in, did you feel that that wasn't necessarily a priority?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a priority in a big company like P&G. Everything's motivated by profit. I think people try and do the right thing. There is a culture of trying to do the right thing, but the mindset is, okay, how do we make, I don't know, a better cleaning product that makes the most amount of profit? They don't care what the chemicals are going to do. They don't care that it's wrapped in plastic. Like, and if you came and said, well, that's not great for the environment, it's going to cost us this many millions to change that's just not going to fly. The only way it's going to work is if there's like a business case to do it. So I wanted something where purpose and the mission was sort of in the business model from the beginning. And also wanted something that was a bit more of a challenger brand. Again, like going back to sort of informal education, we started on, I just love challenger brand thinking, sort of challenging herd mentality, contrarian thinking. And when you work on a brand that's number one, number two in the market, $1 billion brand that's sort of standardized globally, you're trying to appeal to everybody. You can't really have a point of view on anything. You can't really challenge the norms because you are, or the paradigms, because you are the paradigms. So there's that combination of wanting to work on something sustainable and then also a challenger brand that I sort of felt was the kind of next step in my career.
Before we move to that, I wanted to go back to what you said about, I guess, the incentives and the drivers were different in Oral-B. And that made me think of something that could be a complete irrelevant tangent, but I've got it in my head now, so I'll tell you about it. One of the things that annoys me the most about Oral-B, and I own an Oral-B electric toothbrush. You probably know where I'm going with this, and it's great, absolutely great. Had it for a few years and very durable as well. But there is this bloody charger. You know what I'm talking about? There's a charging base where you have to place the toothbrush for charging. And it's quite big and heavy and awkward and very inconvenient to travel with. So I always end up leaving the charger at home, hoping that the charge will last until I'm back home. And obviously end up with a dead toothbrush. Why not a USB-C? Is this one of those things where it doesn't fit the incentives?
Yeah,
And we can cut this off if it's not.
yeah. I think it is probably going off on a different tangent, but I think there's a bunch of regulatory, commercial incentives, and also I would say inertia and kind of being in the paradigm that make it very, very difficult to impossible for the brand to walk away from something like that. And then you've seen a challenger brand like Surrey has come in and kind of just executed on that pretty straightforwardly. Without going into too much detail on it, I think it's just so, you have to imagine like you've got factories producing millions and millions and millions of toothbrushes at scale. The focus is just about like, how do we double down on what we're doing? How do we produce more volume? And then if someone comes on and goes, oh, it'd be really nice if we had a USB charger, it's like, well, where's the data? How are we going to quantify that? How could we? But what about this? What about, where it's going to lead to transnational shipments and arbitrage, and like it just there's so much inertia, and whereas in a challenger brand you go, okay, there's so much conviction and passion in that pain point for people that I'm gonna like double down on that because I know that that's like a really ripe source of innovation.
So in 2023, you joined Ocean Saver, an early stage startup making cleaning products, as you said. At the time when tech, automation, and AI are getting all the attention and headlines, and it seems AI companies are going to shape the future, lots of money being thrown around, why go into a seemingly old, almost boring sector that is dominated by incumbents that had 150 years head start on you?
Yeah, I think if everyone's swimming this way, like it's a great idea to swim the other way as a general rule. But I think the consumer goods industry is amazing because, first of all, it is so enduring through economic cycles. Like it has endured. It's not a fad, and actually, it's products that people use every day. So the impact that you can have is massive. So there's billions of cleaning products used every day, billions of pieces of plastic that end up either going to the ocean, being incinerated, or ending up in landfill. And so, yeah, whilst what we can do is maybe a drop in the ocean, we can impact a lot of people. And like, there are some products, and people create sort of challenger brands in niches where you sort of think, does the world need that? Like, could we manage without it? But it's like we all have to clean our homes, we have to clean our clothes, we have to clean our dishes. And so we're going to take something that everyone's doing and needs to do and just have a transformative impact in that category. And actually, if the category is boring, then what an amazing opportunity to create engagement and to create a new kind of brand and new kind of interaction with that category. So yeah, actually it's sort of on the contrary, all of those things point to why it is a good idea to do it.
Absolutely. Where was Ocean Saver in 2023? What did you find when you joined the company?
Yeah, so when I joined, we'd had most of our history selling cleaning spray refills, which we called eco drops. So most cleaning sprays are 98% water, so we concentrated the actual effective ingredients down into a refill. You can then just put that in any cleaning spray bottle, add water, and you have a highly effective cleaning spray, and it actually costs less than buying a new bottle. So it's sort of like a win for you, a win for the planet as well, and a bit of a no-brainer. We just launched dishwasher tablets, and then I think we quickly saw that category was getting a lot of traction for us. So it was probably, yeah, a relatively big pivot that we made. Yeah, I think the business was sort of, just on the cusp of this pretty big change where we're now, yeah, the dishwasher tablets are our biggest sort of category, and as well as the things like the refills, which maybe do need a little bit more education or are a little bit more, let's say, unusual for a lot of people, we're able to actually apply or come up with a really strong proposition in a category that is growing and people know really well, and sort of we haven't really looked back since then.
So when you joined in 2023, was Ocean Saver still a scrappy startup? How many people are we talking about? Was there a lab, a workshop?
Yeah, I think we're about 7 or 8 people.
At the moment? Or back in
now we're
2020?
12, but we were 7 or 8. The business had been through quite a bit of change. The founder had stepped back. We had some retail presence, but like with any early stage businesses, it was, I would say, precarious. Like you have things that are going well and that could really take off, but then things that can sink you as well. And also joined at a time when I think just about the kind of fundraising market was, I would say, sort of flipped really from the sort of late 2010s, like your sort of 2018, 2019s, to going into COVID, where you have loads of VCs backing consumer goods companies at extraordinary valuations and sort of growth at all costs, like really cheap money, to that just completely drying up and the sort of the COVID boom, the post-COVID bust a little bit, supply chain challenges. So we had a lot going for us, but also to build a consumer goods brand that can compete with the big players, like it takes money and it's always going to be difficult to be profitable from day one. So you need fundraising, and so it was just a tough. It was a really tough environment, cost of living crisis. So yeah, I would say it was we had a lot of potential, but it was precarious, and it was really the focus was on really fixing the fundamentals that we needed to go from kind of a startup to a scale up. So I'd say we spent probably a good 18 months working on product, brand, structural financials, team, everything, manufacturing, everything to just get good fundamentals that we knew we needed to set us up for growth.
Is that why you and this team call themselves the refounders?
Yeah, exactly. So the founder stepped, and then it didn't feel like it was right to call ourselves the founders because we weren't there right at the beginning. But equally, it didn't feel right to just say, okay, we're just employees, because it's up to us to give the vision for the brand and the business. We have to do everything the founders do. So the way I describe it is like we're writing the book, we just weren't there in the first chapter. And it's not an exclusive title. So we kind of encourage anyone in the team to take on the title of refounder. I think it's just about trying to have vision and ownership, and also tell the story of the people behind the brand, because people want to know and they're curious about those stories and they love seeing. And we're not just another faceless corporation, and a lot of what we do is based on our energy and our passion, and we wanted that to really come through. So that was the idea behind the refounders.
And how was the company funded in 2023? Was there already an investor, or?
We'd had multiple investors from the beginning, and then we crowdfunded as well, and we've had a few really successful crowd funds as well. So we have a sort of a really interesting mix of different investors who have quite a lot of experience in consumer goods, but then also we have ordinary people who, ordinary crowdfund investors. We use Seeders, which is now called Republic. So loads of Republic, thousands of Republic investors who are just, they're passionate about the idea of the company. They think it's got great potential. And so what's really cool is that they were able to invest at a great valuation, and they've already seen the sort of value of their investment increase like 5 times. So that feels really good as well to kind of we want to build a community brand. And so it's really nice that people can own a stake in the brand as well.
So what was your role when you joined in 2023, and what was the first thing that you decided to work on?
So I joined to lead the brand. The first thing that I did was to go back to the vision, the mission, the fundamental brand proposition of what we're trying to do, and then start trying to express that and do it on the limited resources that we had. So the way that we think about things is that our mission is to save ocean life from plastic and harmful chemicals. The way that we want to do that is by inspiring a reconnection with our ocean. And I guess the fundamental premise at the heart of the brand is that the ocean is incredible. I would say, other than God, what else is there that is just so amazing that people have such a connection to? And what's remarkable is that no one's built an ocean brand in consumer goods. So you have something which nearly everyone has a connection to, and we can harness that connection to make positive impact. So just like someone will see a Coke bottle or a Coke can, and the colors, red, the logo, they're so like embedded in our memory structures, and they kind of, before you even thinking, oh, that's full of sugar, it's so unhealthy, there's no rational thinking, there's just a kind of subconscious irresistibility. You want to just grab it. We want to take the power of the ocean, which people are really connected to, and apply that to our products. And in that way, we can take everyday moments and transform them from being something where you're using pollutants and plastic to something that is plastic free, doesn't have harmful chemicals, and is ultimately preventing any harm from the ocean and then actually helping to restore it. As we dug into it, we kind of realized actually, first of all, humans have an amazing connection with the ocean from a biological perspective. So every other breath we take comes from the ocean. I'm sure many listeners know all about the critical role the ocean plays on our blue planet, and the fact that for millions of years we have, as human beings, lived by the ocean because that's where abundance is, that's where safety is. And so many religions have a role in like what the ocean represents in terms of rebirth and power and transformation and so on. And so there are all these kind of deep connections. And then when we actually look at our category, you realize, although you're not thinking about the ocean when you do your laundry or you do your dishes, where does the water go at the end? Ultimately, everything, what goes down your drain ends up in the ocean. It doesn't just get filtered out in sewage plants. So there's actually a connection there. And it's, like I was talking before about something is right in front of your eyes and you don't see it. Again, we're all living in the city, most of us nowadays, and we're not living by the coast. So we're not as connected to the ocean as we could be or should be. And it's actually remarkable, the potential to make a difference and connect people and help them see something that is right in front of their eyes that they've never seen before. So kind of, I know that sounds like very esoteric, but I like a really high level, the ambition of creating an ocean mega brand and how that can overcome many of the challenges that eco-friendly brands have failed to get over is really powerful. So just to kind of dig on that one a little bit more. So if you look at most eco brands in most categories, they have been there for 20 years and they're still niche. And this is despite like everybody knowing about the climate crisis, knowing that they should buy more eco-friendly alternatives. But what they've tried to do is they've tried to make eco mainstream, and they've tried to use like guilt, and they've tried to use rationality to try and convince people. What we're trying to do is completely opposite. We're trying to make the mainstream eco. The best thing that would happen is if Finish, Fairy, Persil, Ariel copied us. That would make the biggest impact. If they went plastic free, if they got rid of their harmful chemicals, that would make the impact. What we're trying to do is play in the mainstream of the category and appeal to most people, not to just like a sort of a niche that has been talked to and fought over by loads of eco brands in the past. And the way we're trying to do it is not by rational argument, but is by harnessing the irrational but deeply subconscious and powerful love and connection with the ocean that we all have.
That's fascinating. At a practical level, how is your approach different from the approach of a niche eco brand? What are you doing differently, and why does that not work?
If you think about why people don't buy eco-friendly brands, most people are aware that they exist. They've just deselected them. They think that they won't work, they're going to cost more, and they're not going to be easy. They're going to be inconvenient. And actually, for many brands, that is largely the case. So what we do is we make products that clean just as well as the leading brands. So they're wildly effective. They cost the same, and they're just as easy to use and buy. And then we wrap that in the warm, fuzzy feeling of being connected to the ocean. And we further leverage it with every product that you buy. We donate to ocean conservation. So we're actually involved in active ocean restoration. So not only do you know that you are buying, so you have the peace of mind of like, I'm just basically getting what I would get otherwise, what I would normally buy. But I know there's no plastic, there's no harmful chemicals, and I'm helping restore the ocean. And I feel great that deep down, I feel like I'm a little bit more connected to the ocean, which, deep down we all want.
And in doing so, you're not competing with the eco brands, you are competing with the big guys.
Yeah.
So I really like what you're talking about in terms of the power of the ocean and the ocean connection. And what I wanted to talk about in this next phase was the marketing and the branding, the communication. So I'll tell you this quote that comes from a 2018 interview. It probably will help us move on to the next topic. Eric Ryan, you might know him. He's the co-founder of Method, American brand of eco-friendly cleaning supplies. He said that I think it's totally pointless to make a green product for green people. And he goes on to explain that only about 5% of products sold in the US market are green products. Therefore, if all you're doing is preaching to the converted and the 5%, you're never going to get anywhere. And then he said, we want to create a product that appeals to everyone, not just people that are only going to shop on their environmental credentials. What do you think about that? And what does the power of the ocean give you on top of a brand like Method?
That is a probably even better summary of what we're trying to do, or our approach is exactly as he said. And I think Method have been a pioneer in this space. Like, they use design and scent as a way of like appealing to people and creating irresistibility. And that's what we're doing the same, but we're doing it with the ocean. And I think that the power of the ocean is it just has so much depth in terms of human connection. I don't know if you've read the Blue Mind book, but like just looking at the color blue, it calms our minds. Just looking at the waves gives us a sort of, on the one hand, a kind of familiarity, but on the other hand, a sense of novelty, because no wave is the same. So it's that sort of amazing mix that people like, of like same, but different. Being in the water, being near the water, everything, the smell, the feeling, the light, there's just, it's so powerful for us. And I think that's why we all try and go on holiday to the sea, or if we could retire, we'd probably live by the sea. And I think that's just a whole nother level, a whole nother world on just what was the sort of, let's say, the first generation of this space is what, Method have been, which is, okay, we're going to create something just beautiful. There's beautiful, and then there's the ocean.
Earlier you mentioned a couple of times how you convince people to take action, to change. How do you convince people to take action and change? And how do you use the ocean, if that has a, the ocean story, the ocean concept, if that has a role to play?
I really think of it, again, not in like a rational way. So we put the ocean in front of them. Our campaign at the moment is about a new wave of clean. And it's trying to show that ocean saver products are more, not less, and present them in a completely different way than eco-friendly products have been presented in the past. We know our product performance is as good as the leading brands, and they cost the same. So there's nothing to hide. We can just be so confident about it. So we put the ocean in front of people, and then we just have a really strong proposition which we know appeals. And then it's really just, it's less about telling them and trying to educate, quote unquote, but it's just about sampling our product, letting them try it, letting other people talk about it, and then we go from there. Over time, I'm sure as we get bigger, we'll be investing more in awareness and communication, and so then it will be more about storytelling maybe in that respect. But we just try and get in front of people and put our proposition there and make sure that the proposition itself is irresistible. And we're mostly sold in retail, so the power of retail is we can be in 10 to 15,000 stores, and if the product appeals and sits on the shelf and people see it, they spot it, and they just want to pick it up and are intrigued by it, then that's a really powerful thing that we can do, rather than just relying on us always having to be there to sort of educate people.
In terms of the priority scale for why people buy your products, where do you think is cleaning effectiveness versus design, packaging, fragrance, the sustainability credentials, the ocean story? How do you see that scale?
If you ask people why they buy products in the category, they mostly buy because of, so let's say dishwasher tablets, the number one driver is performance. It's table stakes. The product has to do the job. But if you ask, well, why are they choosing us? It's because they've happened to see us somewhere, And that's down to smart product design, smart go to market of how you make sure you get seen, or they've heard someone's talked about us, they've heard about us. And then they look at the proposition and they see the name, they see the plastic free, they look at it and they think, yeah, that looks like it can work. And then the price is surprisingly affordable. And they go, oh, you know what, I'll give that a go. And then they give it a go and it works really well. And then they're just like, right, cool, I'm on board now.
So it's almost like they need to do a little bit of a leap of faith.
Yeah, but it's my job to make that leap of faith as small as possible. Or we've been doing loads of sampling recently. We show up in a big way. And when we speak to people, we say, okay, here's these Ocean Saver dishwash tablets. They clean like the leading brands. You can get them in this store. They don't have the plastic. They don't have the harmful chemicals. Here's a sample. And people go, cool, I'll give them a try. And then it's just down to the product. They're directionally, like 75% of people say in surveys that they are looking, they are open and looking for plastic-free products. I think most people want to use kinder chemicals if they can. It's just that, as I said, they don't maybe believe that the product will work. So, but there's a really big chunk of people just willing to give it a go. So then it's just a question of if you can kind of neutralize all the things that would put them off, you can disrupt their journey. So yeah, if you have to kind of get in front of them in the first place. But once they then give it a go, if they like it, then they're now aware of you, they've tried it, and they can rebuy you. And then we work with our retail partners to ensure that they have the right availability and the right sort of visibility and promotional plans and so on to kind of get them in and keep them in.
Yeah, and it becomes a no-brainer for them. Look, looking at the time, I think we're gonna have to wrap this up. I'm sad to close this off because I think I prepared a 2-hour interview and my bad. I think I'm quite interested and passionate about what you guys are doing. It's just a cool bunch of topics that I was really looking forward to talk to. And before we wrap it up, is there anything that was absolutely important for you to talk about and that we haven't touched on yet?
I just encourage anyone in your community who's interested to try Ocean Saver. Presume they all wash their clothes. Probably about half of them will have a dishwasher and they all need to clean their homes as well. So head on over to our website, ocean-saver.com, or look for us in most big Tesco's, Waitrose, go on Amazon, Ocado. Give our products a go, see how you like them. If you've got any feedback, let me know. And yeah, if anyone is interested in sort of any kind of collaboration or has any interesting opportunities for Ocean Saver, then we always like people to get in touch as well. So you can find me on LinkedIn as well. I'm happy to connect with anybody.
Is that the best way to get in touch?
Yeah,
LinkedIn.
Probably, yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks so much for your time. It's been really, really cool. It sounds like there's a really cool story behind the brand and an exciting future as well. So thanks so much for coming in.
I really enjoyed it, and I hope it's useful for people who are also building their ventures in the ocean space. We all know how important it is, and we've got a limited time frame to really try and help protect our oceans, so ultimately they can protect us. So thank you so much.